something along those lines. That's ridicule. Um, yeah. So it was a brave thing. It wasn't something that was done too often. At least that what little bit we know. The scripture only tells us a little bit, really, um, of all the stuff that went on. But I'm glad that story was included. So they risked being told, you don't count, or women can't have this, or ridiculed and all that. Okay, so how did the pleas of these sisters change history for all the women of Israel?
They were allowed to inherit.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a big deal. An inheritance is a big deal. I don't know how much property there was, but if you own land, you had something and really precious. It was a big deal to have your own land. There were many stories in the scripture where somebody was trying to get somebody else's land and there was a big problem with it. So if you had land, you had something. So, but that opened the door, set a precedence for other women who would come along later and be in a similar situation. I'm sure the five daughters of Zelophehad weren't the only ones that ever experienced this. So I'm glad that again that this story was included, and that was the policy from then on in Israel. Okay, any other comments on this? It's kind of straightforward. All right, number 2, what role did Moses play in the story?
He didn't dismiss them. If he had dismissed them, there wouldn't have even been a story.
Yeah, he was open-minded.
So he went to a higher authority.
It's good to have a leader who is very intelligent and knows the law, knows the lay of the
And he's
land.
open-minded.
Yeah, and who can make decisions and say, all right, I just know from experience that what we need to do here is X, Y, and Z. But in this case, this was kind of a new thing, and he didn't just say, okay, no, you can't. That's not done in Israel. I'm glad that he said, step back and said, well, gee, I don't know. Let's go to the higher authority here. Let's see what God says about this. So yeah, it's a good thing that he was willing to not just make a quick decision and say, all right, let's check this out. Let's see what's right here. How did God affirm the worth, role, and authority of women in this passage? How did he affirm the worth, role, and authority of women? Let's do one at a time. The worth of women. How did God affirm the worth of women?
Well, he allowed them to inherit. So essentially, they should be able to take care of the land and raise the crops.
Yeah.
He
So
felt they were capable
he was saying they were
just as good.
men are worthy and women are worthy.
Mm.
We all have worth. We're all made in the image of God, male or female, all made in the image of God. So, yeah. How did God affirm the role of women?
Again, equality.
Yeah, equality. It was a male-driven society, but if there was not a man in the picture, the woman could do the job. Well, the woman could take care of that situation. And how many millions of women over the course of time, the husband died or whatever happened, where they stepped up and said, I'm going to take care of this family. That's tough. Women then have to go out to work, and they're trying to work and earn a living, and then still come home and keep the house in order and keep the kids going in the right direction and training them oh, man, my heart always went out to single moms.
Hmm.
It's tough. It's tough. Uh, my wife and I, we really were on the same page with our girls, and they've turned out really wonderfully, and we thank God for that. But we worked really hard with these girls, and we disciplined them and loved them and encouraged them and stood behind them and for everyone. And I thought, gee, it's not horribly hard, but I wouldn't want to do this by myself. And it's so wonderful to have a husband or a wife, as the case may be, the two of you working together to raise your children and do what needs to be done in the household. So I thought, wow, these single ladies, boy, or single men too, single dads. That's
I
tough.
was just going to say that. It's just as hard for a man if he
Yeah,
doesn't have a wife. If his wife dies or something,
yeah.
it's hard for him to be a mother and a provider at the same time too.
I believe in potentiation. That's a medical term. It's used in drugs, where if you take a certain chemical, say a negative potentiation would be you drank alcohol, and then you turned around and you put methadone in your drink. That can kill you. I actually did a funeral for a 19-year-old super basketball player. His wise guy friends put methadone in his alcoholic drink, and it killed him. Potentiation, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It can be one drug heightens the other, or it could be 1 + 1 = 3 or 4. Well, I think in a good marriage, a good husband and a good wife, a good mom and a good dad, working together, it's not just 1 + 1 = 2. They heighten each other. They're able to accomplish so much more. They potentiate each other. 1 + 1 is 3 or 4 or 5. So anyway, when you don't have that, when one of them is missing, and in this case, women are able, certainly, to very hard on them, but step up in all kinds of situations and say, well, somebody's got to do this, and I'm going to do it, and they do. So God affirms here the worth of women, the role of women, and the authority of women. There are times that women are placed in a position of authority and can do a very good job as well. Women were considered, and here I'm reading, I've told you, all these historical books, and women for a long time were considered to be second-class citizens, even intellectually. And that's not the case. Women are just as intelligent as men are. And finally, in the 20th century and 21st century, we've come to understand that. And we have some brilliant men and brilliant women. So.
Look at Queen Elizabeth. Look at how she stood up all this time.
I'm sorry, say that again, Evelyn.
I said, look at Queen Elizabeth. Look how she stood up all this time from a very young girl to accept the throne.
Yeah.
And how to take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we see here God affirming the worth, role, and authority of women in this passage. This brings us to number 3. Can you name places in the church or the community or globally that the role of women is still oppressed? All right, so the first place here is in the church. Are there places where women are oppressed in the church?
What about the Catholic Church? About priests and women being priests and
Yeah, okay.
you know.
there's a wonderful church, Protestant church. Trying to think what that church is. It's not Nazarene. Anyway, it's down in Montgomery, which is just north of Princeton. Elba and I went on Palm Sunday to a cantata there. One of my good friends, my former lay leader from one of my past churches, Peter Jensen, the one that just lost his wife, those of you that have been on the prayer chain, after 48 years, she had died. So we went down to hear him, and then we went out to lunch. It was very nice to see Peter again. And he really likes the church. It's a big, big church. I don't know, they probably have 1,000 members.
Wow.
It's a gorgeous church, and they have a lot of good theology there. And they're very evangelical, but Peter disagrees with them, and so do I. Women are not allowed to have a high leadership role in the church. And I thought, oh goodness, you're missing out on a lot of intelligence and a lot of skill and talent, having that mindset. So there's one right there. It's not that they're mean to the women or anything. It's just understood. You're a woman, you don't get a high position of leadership in the church. And
They're lost.
pardon?
They're lost.
Yeah. And I'm sure if I told them, oh, I have a woman pastor, they'd probably think, oh, gee, you guys are out of whack. No, I think you're out of whack.
Yeah.
So, and then of course it's, there's different levels of oppression. At least women aren't being harmed in terms of physical abuse or anything like that. Emotionally, that's not very nice. Intellectually, that's not very, socially, that's not very nice. Okay, so how can you name places in the community where women are oppressed? I can see the reverse. I'm very happy to say that in Kenilworth, we have a lady mayor. And as far as I know, Linda seems to be doing a fine job.
We've
So,
got a woman mayor in Springfield too.
yeah.
I was trying to think of something, where we actually just have men, but I can't think of that. In the Presbyterian Church, they had men and women there as ministers.
Mhm.
The town has had men and women as mayors. People on the Board of Education,
It's come a long
men,
way.
women.
It's come a long
I
way.
think if you have two equal candidates, and one is male and one is female, cynically, I think the male is more apt to get the job.
Yeah, probably so. That's
Probably.
Probably.
And I think if you have a man and a woman working in the same level of whatever they do, the man is probably getting a higher pay.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
that one I definitely agree with. All you have to do is look at golf.
Yeah,
And you see how they
yeah, even in sports, yeah.
I think there's one sport, I'm trying to think now, I think it's tennis, where the women make just about the same as I might be wrong, but I think tennis, pro tennis, that's the case. Correct me if I'm incorrect.
I don't know about tennis, so I couldn't say about them. I know
no,
golf is definitely way down.
Wait,
Oh,
yeah.
well, and any other sport, the men
What are you doing, dog?
in basketball, in the NBA, make
Matter, go find your
millions,
chair.
millions of dollars. And the WNBA, those women, they play their 32-game season in playoffs, and then they go to Turkey or Russia or Europe, someplace, to play a whole nother season because, of course, it's a shorter season, but I don't know what the highest might be. I don't even know if anybody makes 100,000. I mean, in the NBA, nobody makes just 100,000. They make millions of dollars. So it's way, way out of whack there. My oldest daughter, Christy, she's 34. About 3 years ago, said to me, "Dad, I'm going for my doctorate." I said, "Oh," she said. I said, "You'll be the first one in the family." I was the first one on our side of the Knott family that got a college education and then a master's degree. But now you're going me one better. She said, "Well, you showed me what's possible, Dad," which was a very nice compliment. I said, "Why are you doing this?" She says, "Because of prejudice." I said, "Well, what's going on?" She was a rocket scientist for quite a while, and then she went to research and development. So she's still on the same base, Air Force Base in Ohio. And she said, "Well, the boss likes me, but he won't give me certain projects. I can do those projects like any man can." I said, "I'm sure you can." And she said, "Maybe if I get a doctorate, that'll be less excuse for them to not allow me to do a certain project." I said, "Well, go for it." I support you. I know you're smart enough. You can do it. And she's doing it in statistics. I don't know how much you guys know about doctorates. I don't know a lot, but I do know
It's hard work.
that it's hard work, but a doctorate in statistics is really hard, really hard. She has 7 computers working day and night, helping her. She's been on this thing for like 2.5 years now,
Jeez.
trying to solve this problem that it's a great thesis that she has. It's way over our heads. And it's just not going well. I'm praying that she'll get some more breakthroughs. She can finally get this doctor. But she's pursuing it because she was not getting and she talked to her boss. And he said, "Oh, you're doing a great job," and he placate her, but nothing would change. He likes her, he's nice to her, but nothing. And she doesn't get these positions or these projects. So hopefully she'll get the doctorate, and then we'll see what happens from there. So
When I was to Hannah this week, she was telling me about different people and that she just had gotten over the COVID virus too,
oh, yes.
and she was saying that Ian is getting his doctorate in physical therapy from Seton Hall.
Wow.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Okay, what about globally? How are women oppressed globally?
Well, I think in this country, women have it better than in almost all other countries.
Yes.
So
Here's a positive. Here's a positive for you, but we'll get to the negative in a second. But this is uplifting. I can't think of what it's called, Title 10 or something, one of the title things. Years ago, about 30 years ago, there was a thing passed, this title thing where however many positions you had for men in college sports, you had to have at that same university the same number, I think, and same maybe even finances for women's sports. So the men had to drop even some of maybe their volleyball team or whatever, so that the women could have certain sports. Because of that, we have developed high school girls who now become college women. Their sports prowess. And when we go to the Olympics, we are usually tops now, certainly in the summer games, and usually close to the top in the winter games. And at least as many or more of the medals, especially gold medals that are won by our women as opposed to our men. That was not always the case. But since this Title 10 or whichever title it was, it has given women an opportunity to improve their skills in all kinds of sports. And we are tops in the world, especially our women. Our men's soccer team stinks. Sorry. But our women have won gold medals, world championships, and everything else. So yay, ladies. Keep up the good work. So that's a positive. But yeah, the negatives are, we already said this, Janet said this, women get, even in America, get a lot less pay for a given job than the men are. And that needs to be corrected. Maybe in time it will. So there's that, but the oppression, whatever it is here, it's a lot worse, even to the point of physical violence in other
Yeah.
countries. Talk to Muslim women, if you could, who are forced to wear these burqas, and that's the least that they're going through. Talk to women that have had to deal with the Taliban in Afghanistan. If you're a woman doctor, you can't even practice when they were in power. It's horrendous. It's one of the most oppressive nations on the face of the earth. I think they're ranked 3. North Korea is the worst. And then Somalia, and then Afghanistan. Those are the worst for Christians and for human rights. But China is moving up there very nicely. India has moved up there. That's a shame. But a lot of these Muslim countries, if you're a woman, you are a second, third class citizen even. There's a lot of oppression there. You don't have a whole lot of say. And families, sometimes if a woman even was thought to have done something sexually wrong, the men can do it. They can do whatever they want and get away with it. When a woman does something wrong, they can even be murdered by their own family or have acid thrown in their faces. And I've read all kinds of accounts that are nightmares in these other countries. So God help you if you're a Christian and a woman in some of these other countries. Man, it's a double whammy. So, yeah, I'm sure you've all read accounts of oppression of women, even physical violence in other cultures and countries. So women do have it better here, but it still needs to be improved, especially with the financial situation. Okay, anything else on this? What does it look like to have no inheritance today?
Can you repeat that?
What does it look like to have no inheritance today?
It would be scary.
Yeah. Suppose only men, say in America, could inherit. Well, where would the women be? That'd be terrible. But I guess it could be expanded beyond that, not just inheritance and properties. In other words, let's see, what would it be like to be a second class and a third class citizen in this country? It would be terrible, wouldn't it?
Well, if you had a case, like say the husband dies and the wife is home and she's got 3 or 4 kids and there's no inheritance for her, like no insurance, no pension or something from his work that would keep her going.
Right.
She's got to go to work as well as take care of the 4 kids.
Yeah.
It would be a very hard situation for people these days, especially the way things cost nowadays.
Yeah.
For 2 people.
It's hard
Pardon?
anyway, even if you
Yeah.
have an inheritance.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Right.
So without one, I would say probably that family would be split up, because I don't know
How you could survive.
how you could, yeah,
You know, in some of these biographies I'm reading, I'm dealing with 17, 1800s. Yeah, that's been the case in certain situations where
yeah. When the husband dies, the family splits.
they had like 8 kids. And 2 kids went over to the aunt and uncle over here, and 2 went over to grandma and grandpa over here. I mean, the woman could not. And in those days, women didn't have a whole lot of jobs that were available. And in Christ's time, 2,000 years ago, there were hardly any jobs that a woman had, let alone even be in a position as a CEO of a company or or anything like that. No,
It wasn't heard of.
hey, 100 years ago, women were trying to get the vote, get the right to vote. So we have made progress, but we still have a ways to go. But, you know, we've seen some good things happen. Hopefully more will happen. Okay, let's see. How can we be the voice and affirmation of God to them? How can we be the voice and affirmation of God to people who seem to have no, especially women, who seem to have no inheritance? In other words, no power, no authority, no leverage of anything. What can we do?
Support and speak up.
Yeah, you know what? There are ministries that I've seen, very practical, in some churches I've read about. One of them, you had a lot of men that were mechanics in a couple of times I've read this in different churches. And the men tend to be better mechanics. It's just the skill level. Women,
They have the opportunity.
well, that's true. That's true. But women tend to have different skills. There's overlapping, and there are women that are mechanics, of course. But in this church, it had like several men who were really good car mechanics. And here's a woman who's got 3 kids. Her husband died or got divorced or whatever. And she's in the church and she's trying to make it. And these men had like a special Saturday once every couple months where a woman could bring her car to these men, and they put the car up on the rack and change the oil, or you know, she's got a transmission problem, and they would raise money and put a new transmission in for $300-400 or more. You know, which is a really tremendous ministry where they were stepping up and they were using their skills to help these women. My wife, soon to be former wife, was much better and more mechanically inclined than I was. We used to put our car up on I can't think of the right word. We had those metal
The lift?
The lift.
lifts. We had metal lifts. And we used to put, you know, and I would help her. She was the one that actually changed the oil in the silly car.
I changed my oil too.
You know, so, you
Yeah,
know.
I also repaired leaks.
Yeah. So women can certainly do that, but men are more inclined in that way than women are. Women are better in other skills, but there's overlapping.
Yeah, because I think they're more inclined because the opportunity was there. When I was in high school
true.
and I graduated in 1960, in our junior and senior years, so 58 and 59, we had to choose an elective. I wanted to take woodworking. I was not allowed to take woodworking. I had to take cooking.
Oh, see that?
Okay.
That was the
28
same in Springfield too.
Yeah, 28 years later, because my son is 28 years younger than I am, the sister of one of the women, actually, no, she was 4 years older. So the sisters would have been probably about Jason's age at that time, was allowed to take woodworking. They had changed it, and she made some beautiful furniture that she sold. She actually started her own business of making picture frames and furniture. because she was allowed to take woodworking in school, and it was something she excelled at.
Yeah.
And I probably could have, because I was very good with my hands and that kind of stuff, but I wasn't allowed.
Yeah, that's
So
not,
things have changed now, where you're encouraged to do things that interest you, and you're not just pigeonholed into one thing because it's a female thing or a male thing.
you know what? How many of you, dear sisters, have seen Hidden Figures?
Read the book.
Yeah,
Okay, because, you know, you read the book or you probably stream it or whatever and see the movie. I cried 2 or 3 times in that movie. And it was a double whammy because the women were black and they were
Yeah.
women.
and they were women. Yeah,
And they
Yep.
went against all
and they
kinds
were
of
way
prejudice.
under the radar.
And they were just absolute geniuses in terms of, one was very good with understanding computers. One was exceptional, just a genius when it came to mathematics. And I forget what the other one, but all 3 of them were really, really super bright. And they were very instrumental in helping Colonel Glenn get launched into space. They did the mathematics. And in fact, the one lady did it on paper, mathematically on paper. And it was just about that time that IBM was coming out with the computer.
I was
And
gonna say, this was before computers.
yeah, the computers were just coming out. And the computer analyzed the situation. And there was a window. Glenn went up, and then he had only this little window to come through safely to get back to Earth when his mission was over. And the computer said that was possible if you did this window just right. And they said, well, what do you think about this? And he says, well, yeah, my life is on the line here. If that computer's wrong, I'm dead. He didn't say it exactly like that, but he said, listen, if the girl, I don't know if he said girl or the woman, says it's okay, let her do the math on paper. And if she says it's okay, then I'll go. And she did the analysis, and she said, yeah, no, this will work. And it did, and history was made. So that's a wonderful, wonderful movie, a real life story. Hidden Figures. Of these 3 black women who did a fantastic job in helping us get ahead of the Russians many, many years ago. So that was a good thing. There was a boss, actually, in the movie. It was one boss that really took their part and said, we got to listen to them. They can do this. But from what I read, I think there were 2 or 3 different men that supported them. And for the sake of what, I don't know, Hollywood put qualities of all 2 or 3 of these men together into one boss. But it doesn't matter. Right? At least there was a man or men that believed in these women and said, hey, they seem to know what they're doing here. Let's give them a chance. And they did a great job. And we beat the Russians.
Her son also won the go-kart race too.
Say that again?
One of them helped her son build one of those, what are they, go-karts that they race?
Oh, okay.
And because of her engineering skill,
Yeah,
it was no better or worse than anybody else's. She just knew how to distribute.
that was it.
Yeah,
Jane, that was the other one. There was the mathematical genius, the computer genius, and the engineer. The one lady was good in engineering. God had given gifts to each of these ladies to open things up, to help the country, but to show the world, hey, the ladies have skills as well.
But they never got credit until a few years ago.
I know. Well, at least it's finally, little by little, opening up. So I think we're going to continue to move and improve in this area. Now we have a big controversy going on in sports with the soccer team. Like I say, the men are not very accomplished. We don't even make it to the World Cup sometimes, which is a disgrace, a country with this kind of talent athletically. But the women have won, like I said, world championships. And they don't make but a fraction of what the men are making. So they've gone before Congress. Rapinoe, I can't think of her first name. Megan Rapinoe, and some of the others. And Carly Lloyd, I have great respect for Carly Lloyd. She came from one town over from my last church where I served. She's got to be in her mid-30s now, so she's at the end of her career. But great soccer player on our world championship teams, and they have been asking Congress to take a look at this and make it fair. They should be paid much better than what they have been. So, little by little, things are changing. Good things take time. So there's hope. There's hope. So I think this is an interesting passage. I never preached on this passage before. I'm really glad that we had this message today. It really opened things up, I think. So keep the faith and keep praying.
Very good.
Things will improve in this area, and racial prejudice and all these different
And everything, yeah.
things. So, all right. Any other questions, thoughts, observations?
Nope, I think you did good.
Yeah, praise God. I think we covered it. We always have good discussions. Thanks to my dear sisters. And we're thankful for anybody else that may not be able to give input here, but are listening on Facebook. All righty. Well, have